so sure you had it right on this one. Any of us that are still old enough in this room to have used a 640K microprocess-driven computer, you remember you'd hit the key and you'd wait a few seconds for the letter to come up and you'd clap a little bit and then you'd hit the key again. It was fun. And last, I do want to take a minute to pay tribute to one of our greatest innovators, may he rest in peace, Steve Jobs. Steve had a message for SMEs. And that message was, it's not about money. You've heard this from every single panelist. It's not about the dollars. It's about culture. It's about leadership. It's about creativity. It's about mindset. It's about the most important data point in my view, and I'm so glad that all three panelists have touched on it. Our greatest crisis as a country, our greatest crisis as a globe, is the underemployment rate. It's not the unemployment rate. The economy will eventually correct the unemployment rate. I believe that. We've always had cycles. We'll have a cycle again, 2014. If that's what it is, that's what it is. In the UK, 59% of all private sector workers are either disengaged or actively disengaged. 59%? How do you harvest innovation inside companies when 60% of the people hate their job? Have you ever been inclined to go the extra mile inside a company or a job that you had where you hated it? Or felt underappreciated, undermotivated, underpaid, underchallenged, underutilized? That's the problem that needs to be fixed. That's the role that innovation can play, I believe, in fostering economic development. That's the role that SMEs can play. You know, one thing we haven't studied yet is why do people go to work for small companies? There's a culture, there's a mindset. Delve inside the brain of the person that prefers to work for a small company for less salary, less benefits, less, of all of this. Why? When you figure out the why, you'll figure out the how. And we'll be able to really understand how SMEs can harvest innovation inside companies. What were some of Steve's lessons? Lessons I try my best to live by. First, obviously, passion. We can't have innovation without passion. It's almost impossible. You know, you don't meet a lot of creative people who aren't passionate. I haven't. You know, most of them, in fact, are the opposite. They're too passionate. They're blinded by their own passion, such that they can't see their way through what's going to be valuable and what's not. Second, all of us in this room owe it to ourselves, to our families, to our legacy, to figure out how to put a dent in the universe. I mean, I can't remember anyone who's passed away where 10 days later we're all still talking and paying tribute, at least the people in my world, the innovators, the entrepreneurs, the CNBCs and the Bloombergs and everybody who wants to talk about the impact that this man and this company has had. And what I really watched, and this is the thing I was most proud of, was the stock movement following his death, which was pretty minimal. That showed that it wasn't just about Steve, it was about the company that was built, about the successes and the things that we can learn. Kicking start your brain, another big lesson in innovation and creativity. What's the definition of insanity? Who knows? I've had one participation. This is now for dinner with Rohit in LA, and you pay. Now, we may not get as many volunteers for that.
That's the definition of insanity.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. This is a big problem inside companies. We talk about inefficiency in larger or smaller companies. We've got to change things up a bit. We can't expect, just as other panelists have said, to do the same thing and expect that things will change. The paradigm does need to shift. The regulatory environment needs to shift. Bless you. Selling dreams, not products. Do you know there was a time in our house when we had 9 iPods and 4 humans, right? 3 of them matched outfits for my 18-year-old daughter. 2 of them were updated because they could carry more music. I mean, how do you create a company where you have more products than humans in a household? How do you distinguish between things that people want versus things that they need? I believe Apple's growth in part has been the ability to convince us that if we had the iPhone 3, we've got to have the 4, and then we all wait in line for the 5. And there are already people I know thinking about the 6. How do you create that kind of customer loyalty? And those of you smiling in this room, you are that guy or that gal. You got to have it if it's new and different. And we'll talk about the importance of that in a second. Saying no to things. Small companies, the consequences and the stakes are high. They don't have the kind of R&D budgets that larger companies have. If they're going to engage in a product or service line innovation, they've got to get it right. They can't afford the losses of the investment to get it wrong. So there's got to be that internal venture capital mindset, both in small and larger companies. Creating insanely great customer experiences. You know, I want to pay tribute here to somebody that was already mentioned by Rohit. Thomas Edison, greatest inventor of all time. Why was he the greatest inventor of all time? Because he was one of the few inventors that did not suffer from inventor syndrome, who did not invent for the sake of invention, or for the sake of admiration of his peers, or invent for the sake of admiration by himself. What did Edison invent for? You can do this. Come on, this is the participation part. Why did he invent? The soul, if you read any of his writings, any of his memoirs, read the stuff coming out of the Edison Foundation, he invented for only one person, the customer. The customer. And Steve was also very customer-centric in his innovation. And creating evangelists, I mean, you know, nobody, I think, has done a better job than Apple in that. So what are the key observations I have for you? And I'll just take a signal from Giuseppe, because again, I've got a lot more slides than time. In a resource-constrained global economy, our focus has to be on capital-efficient growth. Capital-efficient growth and the harvesting of intangible assets that already exist go together like peanut butter and chocolate. I mean, they are perfectly complementary as a strategy. We need to embrace them. And it's not about raising trillions of dollars or, you know, of course, if the capital markets would start normalizing and participating, that would be wonderful. That would just make it even better. But we can't afford as a nation or as a globe for our SME leaders to sit idle waiting for the capital markets to stabilize. We've already got enough effort and cash sitting idle. Something like $2.7 trillion in cash sitting idle. Apple has $82 billion, Microsoft $50 billion, Google $60 billion. You know, those of us that went to business school, remember buy versus build analysis? We'll either deploy that cash for M&A or start innovating organically. Just unleash some of the cash that's there. You know, and that together with an approach towards capital efficiency, I think will partly solve the problem. We have government labs, we have universities, spending, doing research. How can we build better collaboration and communication with small and medium-sized enterprise leaders who know how to harvest these things into products and services? Because with all due respect to my 24 years in academia, don't rely on the professors and the researchers to do it. It's not their job, it's not their mindset. That's not a criticism, it's an observation. It's the entrepreneurial leaders who know how to take stuff that already exists and create products from it. And one thing we are the king of is incremental innovation. I mean, we have always been the king of incremental innovation. I mean, think about it. McDonald's, Federal Express, right? Starbucks. Did Howard Schultz invent coffee? I know some people think so. It's not the case. Ray Kroc did not invent the cheeseburger, and Fred Smith did not invent delivery. UPS was around for quite some time, and Google, what a success story. There are a few of us in the room that remember AOL as our first access to the internet. Google came in with incremental innovation, great branding, great evangelical-like marketing, and just blew Yahoo and AOL and all the other search engines out of the water. That's what we're good at. And guess what? In a Web 2.0 connected world, that stuff is way cheaper than it's ever been. Small and mid-sized enterprises can access that level of innovation, and they can do it tomorrow. And they don't have to raise $10 million in venture capital. There was a time, raise your hand if you remember this, where getting a cool website built at the peak of the dot-com mania was a $5 to $7 million undertaking. I mean, seriously, like if you didn't have Razor Site doing a $5 million website, you just weren't cool.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, there's TV ads. Hire us for hosting, we'll build you the website for free. I mean, you know, there's been a genuine leveling of the playing field. The impact, we've talked about the need for legal harmonization. I think Rohit did a great job making that case. I don't know when that will happen. But we can't keep having folks on the Hill and folks in the White House pressure small businesses